Life and Death of King Richard II, commonly called Richard II, is a history play by William Shakespeare believed to have been written around 1595. It is based on the life of King Richard II of England, ruled 1377-1399, and chronicles his downfall and the machinations of his nobles. It is the first part of a tetralogy, referred to by some scholars as the Henriade, followed by 3 plays about Richard's successors, Henry IV, Part 1, Henry IV, Part 2, and Henry V. Although the first folio, 1623, includes the play among the histories, the earlier quarto edition of 1597 calls it the tragedy of King Richard II. Characters: King Richard II. John of Gaunt, Duke of Lancaster, Richard's uncle. Duke of York, Richard's uncle. Duke of Aumerle, York's son. Thomas Mowbray, Duke of Norfolk. Queen Richard's wife, an unnamed composite of his first wife, Anne of Bohemia, and his second, Isabella of Valois, who was still a child at the time of his death, Duchess of York, York's wife, an unnamed composite of York's first wife, Infanta Isabella of Castile, and his second, Joan Holland. Duchess of Gloucester, widow of Thomas of Woodstock, Duke of Gloucester, uncle to the king. Rebels: Henry Bolingbroke, Duke of Hereford, son of John of Gaunt, later Henry IV. Earl of Northumberland. Henry Hotspur, Percy Northumberland's son. Lord Ross. Lord Willoughby. Lord Fitzwater. Sir Piers Exton. Richard's allies. Duke of Surrey. Earl of Salisbury. Lord Berkeley. Bushy favourite of Richard. Bagot favourite of Richard. Green favourite of Richard. Bishop of Carlisle. Abbot of Westminster. Sir Stephen Scrope. William Le Scrope, 1st Earl of Wiltshire, featured in Thomas of Woodstock, as Sir Thomas Scrope, is an offstage character referred to as the Earl of Wiltshire. Others: Lord Marshal, post held in 1399 by Duke of Surrey, though this is not recognised in the play. Welsh Captain. Tuoralds. Gardener. Gardener's man. Queen's ladies. Keeper jailer at Pomfret Prison. Groom. Attendants, lords, soldiers, messengers, etc. Summary. The play spans only the last 2 years of Richard's life, from 1398 to 1400. It begins with King Richard sitting majestically on his throne in full state, having been requested to arbitrate a dispute between Thomas Mowbray and Richard's cousin, Henry Bolingbroke, later Henry IV, who has accused Mowbray of squandering money given to him by Richard for the king's soldiers and of murdering Bolingbroke's uncle, the Duke of Gloucester. Bolingbroke's father, John of Gaunt, 1st Duke of Lancaster, meanwhile, believes it was Richard himself who was responsible for his brother's murder. After several attempts to calm both men, Richard acquiesces, and it is determined that the matter be resolved in the established method of trial by battle between Bolingbroke and Mowbray, despite the objections of Gaunt. The tournament scene is very formal with a long, ceremonial introduction, but as the combatants are about to fight, Richard interrupts and sentences both to banishment from England. Bolingbroke is originally sentenced to 10 years banishment, but Richard reduces this to 6 years upon seeing John of Gaunt's grieving face, while Mowbray is banished permanently. The king's decision can be seen as the first mistake in a series leading eventually to his overthrow and death, since it is an error which highlights many of his character flaws, displaying as it does indecisiveness in terms of whether to allow the duel to go ahead, abruptness, Richard waits until the last possible moment to cancel the duel, and arbitrariness, there is no apparent reason why Bolingbroke should be allowed to return and Mowbray not. In addition, the decision fails to dispel the suspicions surrounding Richard's involvement in the death of the Duke of Gloucester. In fact, by handling the situation so high-handedly and offering no coherent explanation for his reasoning, Richard only manages to appear more guilty. Mowbray predicts that the king will sooner or later fall at the hands of Bolingbroke. After an impassioned invective against the visiting king from his sickbed, John of Gaunt dies and Richard seizes all of his land and money. This angers the nobility, who accuse Richard of wasting England's money, of taking Gaunt's money belonging by rights to his son, Bolingbroke, to fund war in Ireland, of taxing the commoners, and of fining the nobles for crimes committed by their ancestors. They then help Bolingbroke to return secretly to England, with a plan to overthrow Richard. There remain, however, subjects who continue to be faithful to the king, among them Bushy, Bagot, Green and the Duke of Aumerle, son of the Duke of York, cousin of both Richard and Bolingbroke. When King Richard leaves England to attend to the war in Ireland, Bolingbroke seizes the opportunity to assemble an army and invades the north coast of England. Executing both Bushy and Green, Bolingbroke wins over the Duke of York, whom Richard has left in charge of his government in his absence. Upon Richard's return, Bolingbroke not only reclaims his lands but lays claim to the very throne. After a dramatic public ceremony where he has the captive king publicly renounce his crown, he crowns himself King Henry IV, and has Richard taken prisoner to the castle of Pomfret. Aumerle and others plan a rebellion against the new king, but York discovers his son's treachery and reveals it to Henry, who spares Aumerle as a result of the intercession of the Duchess of York while executing the other conspirators. After interpreting King Henry's living fear as a reference to the still-living Richard, an ambitious nobleman extant goes to the prison and murders him. King Henry repudiates the murderer and vows to journey to Jerusalem to cleanse himself of his part in Richard's death.